It's actually not an odd pairing. Oh, that light is really bright. It's not an odd pairing because I don't talk about diets with a beginning and an end, right? They always have endings, right? I talk about learning to eat in a way that's healthy and supports your body, your mind, and your spirit, and being mindful about what you're eating. So having cookies, having a piece of cake at a birthday party, having pizza with your friends, all that's fine. You just want to be mindful of what you're doing the rest of the time. So Stephanie, thank you very much, and Carolyn, thanks for the introduction. So why am I here? I want to tell you just a little bit why I'm here and how I got here to this career. I've worked in public health for more than 3 decades, traveled around the world, and did a lot of planning in Asia and Africa and South America, a lot of health program planning, evaluation, ran a lot of nutrition programs, and worked on the Hill, did health legislation for Jim Moran. I had a number of different jobs, and along the way I got Lyme disease. And I went through the traditional medical establishment and saw one doctor after the next, and I didn't get well. I got sicker and sicker, and all the antibiotics that I took just made me worse. And not only did they make me worse, but they really destroyed the lining of my gut. And we know, we've been reading in the paper about the microbiome and what happens in the gut. I'm going to talk about that some tonight. But antibiotics over a long period of time can really wreak havoc on your entire system. So after a number of years of this, more than 15, I decided to take matters into my own hands. And I was still working during this time, but I left my job. Oh, sorry, I keep wandering. Okay. I left my job. I was with the American Public Health Association as an executive, and I went back to school to learn about nutrition. And not only did I learn about nutrition, but I learned about calming the central nervous system through meditation, and I learned about yoga and became a yoga teacher, and learned a number of things that really helped me think about my body and wellness in a very different way. I studied with some energy practitioners, and I learned hypnosis, and I studied a lot of different things really that were intended to help me cure myself. And as I got better, I decided to hang up a shingle and start seeing friends and family and neighbors and other people, and created a business. And one of the things that I feel very passionately about, and you'll get this sense as we move through this talk, is that there's so much that we can do to help ourselves. And we often forget that, and we give the power over to our physicians or our healthcare providers, and we forget that really it's our body. We really know our bodies better than anybody else, and learning to work with our bodies, learning to listen to our bodies makes a big difference in our health. So that's why I got into this, and it is my pleasure to share this information with you, and I hope you'll pass it along. This is a 3-part series. This first one will be about food and the impact on your health and what you can do about it, how you can maximize what you eat. Thank you, Chris. The second one will be about digestive health. Most of the clients that I see have digestive health issues, and in fact, most of us in general have digestive health issues. We may not know it yet, but we do, and they affect our total system. And then the third one, I'm bringing in a friend of mine who runs the Environmental Working Group. I hope you all picked up a little packet when you were paying out front. The Environmental Working Group does research on foods and toxins and all kinds of things that are found in the environment and how they affect us. So that little burlap bag, could you just hold your bag up? Oh yeah, there we go. Kristen, thank you. So if you didn't pick it up. They're the Dirty Dozen, the Clean 15, all kinds of interesting information and resources, websites to go to for more information. So let's get started. So the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. Gloria Steinem. So how did we get from here, where we picked our food, harvested our food, ate fresh, local produce, mostly produce, to here. It's been a long and arduous journey, and as a result of this journey, we have gotten fat and sick. So how many times do we say, I want this, I shouldn't, but I will. I had a hard day, one piece of this doesn't matter. I've been good all day. I already cheated, so what does it matter? I'll start tomorrow. I was bad today. I was good today. How has food, oops, I have a typo there. How has food, that which sustains us and nourishes us, become our public enemy number one? We talk about it all the time. The diet industry is more than $1 billion industry. There are health foods now that are reaping huge amounts of money. How is this? But we don't. So what the food industry does is they look at these 6 factors here, the anticipation. What are people anticipating when they go purchase a meal? How does it look? How does it smell? How does it taste? What's the flavor? And the purple cow. So what's the purple cow? The purple cow is that thing that's going to really get someone's attention and stand out. So this is how the industry creates their foods. They want, and the more fat there is in the foods, the better they look, the smoother they taste. Fat captures other particles, other food particles, and it enhances the aroma and the taste and the palatability, the ability to go down smoothly. The results are that we have conditioned hyper-eating, we have addiction, we have obesity, chronic diseases, depression, self-loathing, etc. We tend to be overweight, don't like the way we look, and we certainly don't like the way we feel. So interesting, Hippocrates, considered to be the father of medicine, who lived from 460 to 377 BC, back then said, let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food. Oh, Hippocrates, what has happened to us? Well, what we now know is that food is information. It speaks to our genes, turning them on or off. There's an entire science around this called nutrigenomics, and the larger science is epigenetics, how things in the environment affect our genes, turning them on or off. We used to believe that you were born with a set of genes, they reflected your parents and their parents, and that's what you had, and if your parents had diabetes, you were going to get diabetes. Now we know that's not true. That in fact you may have a predisposition to it, but things in the environment turn on or off those genes. So we have an incredible ability to change the way our genes express themselves. Whole plant-based foods. So you'll notice in this photograph, you recognize these foods, but notice the texture, the shape, the colors. They're odd. There's nothing generally smooth about them. They have little bumps and ridges, and they're vibrant colors. They reflect nature. These are whole foods, and our body understands and has the capacity to digest and assimilate them. These kind of foods fuel our body. They hydrate and nourish the cells. They defend our cells from damage and repair them. They support the mitochondria to produce energy. Foods are the foundation for our hormones, our enzymes, catalysts, and neurotransmitters. And they support growth and development, and they carry away toxins and parasites. Food is not just about filling up our bellies. But when the body doesn't recognize the food as friendly, for example, these foods, and what do you notice about them? Anybody want to this is informal, so just
Raw fat.
But how do they look to you? Do you know? They're smooth, right? They're round. You can tell that they were formed by molds. They're not, other than the lettuce and the tomato, they're not really natural colors, right? They're bright colors to get your attention. They're the purple cows. These kind of foods, we now know, damage our DNA. So at the cellular level, these foods are causing damage. Uncontrolled cell growth. So what happens is, I'm going to talk about this a little bit, but we produce insulin-like growth factor, which causes cells to grow, cancer cells to grow. So the more we raise our insulin levels, the greater our risk for cancers. These kind of foods interfere with digestion, assimilation, and elimination. They signal the body to store fat, create plaque in arteries, disrupt hormones, reduce the availability of critical nutrients. The body becomes highly acidic and inflamed, and of course, cancers and infections like nothing else than an acidic environment. And this leads to obesity, heart disease, autoimmune disease, depression, headaches, many problems. But you say, I eat a healthy diet. This couldn't possibly be me. Or could it? So let's just take an example of what I think might be a normal menu or an average menu for a working person. So for breakfast, coffee with cream and sugar, a glass of OJ, instant oatmeal with maple sugar, maybe a handful of walnuts, banana. Lunch, Caesar salad with chicken, maybe a Panera, bread and butter, Diet Coke. Snack, maybe an apple and a handful of roasted nuts, glass of water. Dinner, grilled salmon with olive oil and spices, baked potato with butter, grilled vegetables with olive oil, 2 glasses of wine. And for dessert, maybe at 10 p.m., standing in front of the freezer, having some Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Recognize that? Sound kind of familiar? Okay, so I just did an exercise, and I wanted to look at how much sugar and fat and sodium is in this kind of average meal. So you can see, you might be interested in noticing that Panera Caesar chicken salad has 31 grams of fat and 1,440 grams of sodium. Look at an apple. Did you realize that an apple has so much sugar, 24 grams of sugar? That's a fair amount of sugar. So the guideline is basically an average or a maximum of 25 grams of sugar a day. If you're pre-diabetic or have diabetes, 15 grams of sugar a day. So notice how many grams of sugar in a glass of orange juice. How many of us start our day with a glass of orange juice? Now, when we have an apple and we have the fiber in the apple, the fiber slows down the absorption of the sugar. When we just drink a glass of orange juice, we get no fiber, and so it goes into our blood very, very quickly, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but we stimulate the pancreas to produce insulin. It happens very quickly. But you notice, this looks like a pretty average diet, but look, there are 2,857 calories in this. And over a period of a year eating like this, you will gain 20 pounds easily. And this is how we eat. Look at the Starbucks white mocha frappuccino, 49 grams of sugar. So what's the public enemy number one? So sugar causes inflammation. We know that it causes inflammation. It's how they function. They need glucose. But what happens is we have been giving ourselves so much glucose that it overstimulates the pancreas. And when this happens and we produce too much insulin, we develop what's called insulin sensitivity or insulin resistance. This also leads to the rise in insulin-like growth factor number 1. And this promotes the growth of solid tumors. We see it in breast, prostate, and lung primarily, but it can happen anywhere in the body. The results of sugar probably don't surprise you. We've all had gone overboard with our sugar, right? And notice a change in our mood. We notice that we get tired when it wears off. Irregular heartbeat, sweaty, headaches, insomnia, inflammation in belly fat, and it's addictive. So they did a really interesting study, and they did PET scans of people who were heroin addicts. And of course, when you look at a PET scan, one side of the brain lights up. When you give them the sugar-salt-fat combination, the whole hemisphere of the brain lights up. And that's how addictive sugar is. In fact, it's said that sugar is more addictive than cocaine. And it's in everything. It's in bread, it's in ketchup, it's everywhere you look. Insulin resistance is directly proportional to your waistline and your risk of heart disease, cancers, autoimmune disease, and other degenerative diseases. Let me go back to that for a second. Oh, just went forward. Okay, I'm really good. Here we go. Okay. So one of the things that we know about sugar is that you want more and more of it, and so you continue to seek out sugar, and we get used to having that sweetness in our food. So we end up putting sugar in our tomato sauce, or sugar in our coffee, or sugar in our cereal, or we like fruit-flavored yogurts that have a lot of sugar in them. So we've gotten very used to having that sweet flavor. Sodas are the worst, of course, it doesn't surprise you. One soda a day, that's a full sugar soda, increases your risk of diabetes by 82% over 4 years, and increases being overweight by 60%. One diet soda a day increases the diabetes risk by 67% and the risk of being overweight by 200%, much more than a regular soda. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. One soda a day, the predictable weight gain is 15 pounds a year. And I thought this was interesting. What's in a Coke? So there's as much salt in a Coke as there is an entire pizza. But you don't notice it because there's so much sugar. 17 to 20 teaspoons of sugar in a 12-ounce Coke. This generation of kids is the first generation predicted to have a shorter lifespan than their parents, and it's a direct result of their diet. Let's talk about Diet Cokes and artificial sweeteners for a moment. So what we know about NutraSweet and aspartame and all these fake sugars is that they disrupt hormonal and neurological signals that control fullness and satiety. They don't tell us that we're done eating. In fact, they actually promote more hunger. They contain neurotoxins. They've been shown to include mercury. They increase the risk of being overweight. And interestingly, they punch holes in the lining of the gut wall, leading to what's known as leaky gut. And once we get leaky gut, what happens is particles from foods that we eat, especially proteins, leak out of the gut and may get into the bloodstream, and the body attacks them because they're foreigners. Interestingly enough, that the FDA registers complaints from products that are out on the market, and NutraSweet is the #1 product that people put complaints in about. They get in touch with the FDA for adverse effects from NutraSweet. Serious enough that they would call the FDA or write a letter. So the most insidious problem caused by processed foods stripped of their natural enzymes, vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, and contaminated with hormones, antibiotics, insecticides, and pesticides is the havoc that it wreaks on our digestive system. And I'm going to talk next time in January about digestive health specifically and what we can do to mend it. But when our digestion isn't working right, it affects everything in our bodies. So if we're sensitive to gluten, we're sensitive to a lot of other things. If we have pollen allergies, we're sensitive to gluten and probably casein, which is the protein in milk. If we're sensitive to citrus fruits, we're probably sensitive to other things as well. So understanding that once the gut is damaged, you develop a lot of food sensitivities, and you may not have GI systems. You may have lethargy. You may have headaches. You may have trouble sleeping, but something is affecting you in the food that you eat. Extra weight reflects inflammation, and it's only the tip of the iceberg. So we know when we have extra weight, we know that we're inflamed, but what's it doing to our organs on the inside? The most common reason that people give up their own power is that they believe they don't have any. In the end, you and only you get to choose what you do and do not eat. The power to change is yours and yours alone. I love this quote. Change is never painful. Only the resistance to change is painful. And John Wayne, courage is being scared to death but saddling up anyway. So forget about dieting. This is what you need to know to turn things around. Michael Pollan, award-winning author, eat food, mostly plants, not too much. Eat like you care. Eat like you care about yourself. This list doesn't look unfamiliar to you. In fact, we probably all eat this way, but we add in a lot of other things along the way. So when I work with clients, what I work with them primarily on is finding substitutes, because we like certain textures, we like certain flavors, we like the way certain foods look. So finding substitutes for the foods that we like, I think works the best. Because, just like we had cookies here tonight, we have to live, right? And we enjoy food. So we don't want to feel like, we don't have most of us don't have an austere lifestyle where we don't enjoy food. We want to enjoy it. It's food started off first as nourishing and sustaining us, and then as we developed more money as societies, we began to really enjoy food and experiment with it. And that's the mindset that we want to have, that food can support us. It doesn't always have to be a negative thing. In fact, it doesn't have to be a negative thing, but you have to pay attention to what you're eating. Phytochemicals. So plants have phytochemicals. Phyto just means plant. And there are so many nutrients that we haven't yet quantified all of the nutrients in plants. But the more you eat of them, the more you protect your body. So think about what you eat during the course of the day. Are there opportunities for you to add plant-based food into your diet? When you have eggs in the morning, could you add spinach or Swiss chard or kale to your eggs, collard greens? Or mushrooms, could you maybe skip the cheese? When you have lunch, could you have a big salad and add some nuts and seeds to your salad and things other than animal protein? Can you look at your plate every day and look to eat lots of colorful foods? These colorful foods are they're just filled with nutrients, and they support our brain and our bodies. They support circulation. They clean the blood. They clean up the mess from the ice cream that we had the night before. So reading labels is really critical, because you don't know what you're getting unless you look at a label. And I still like my potato chips, but I read the label, because what I don't want is trans fats, and I want to make sure that they weren't cooked in hydrogenated oils, and that they don't have too much sodium. So making sure that you understand what's in a food and how it's prepared is really helpful to making decisions about whether you want to eat it or not. Let me just stop here for a moment and say I learned something really interesting from a friend of mine who is Vietnamese. And she said, I learned to eat food based on what the food does for my body, not how it tastes. And that was a really interesting concept to me, to eat for our health, not for our mind. To eat being aware of what our body might need and might benefit from, instead of going for the sweet thing or going for what everyone else goes for. So when you look at the label, you want to look for less than 25 grams, because that's really your maximum limit for the day. You want 0 grams of high fructose corn syrup, which is very destructive. So high fructose corn syrup is made from corn because it was cheap. We highly subsidize it in this country, so it became a very cheap source of sweetener for us. And it's in everything. I mean, it's in everything. And the problem with high fructose corn syrup is it's primarily fructose. And fructose doesn't go through the bloodstream. It goes right to the liver. And the liver it's called lipogenesis, but the liver makes fat out of it. And if you have a lot of high fructose corn syrup in your diet, you are unnecessarily driving your liver to produce fat, and we end up with fatty liver. So fatty liver is a really common diagnosis these days. And of course, you want to look at sodium. Dietary fiber. I cannot stress enough how important fiber is. If you feel like you're not getting enough fiber during the day, buy some organic psyllium husk and just add a tablespoon to a glass of water and have it during the day. But fiber is so important to maintain the health and the peristaltic action of the large intestine, of the colon. It absorbs all kinds of toxins and helps move them through. Fiber primarily comes from plant foods, seeds, nuts, whole grains, and beans. As we get older, oftentimes it's more difficult to digest fiber. So look for easy ways to add fiber into your diets. Grinding up some flax seeds, adding them to a drink or to your salad or something. Adding chia seeds even with fiber. Not getting enough fiber in your diet is directly correlated with cancer, heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure. We choose our food for very good reasons. Isn't it time that we include our health? So what I do when I work with clients or groups of people is I walk them through a couple of steps. One is to set realistic goals and write them down. And in fact, I prepared, Sam in here? No. Sam's gonna bring in some handouts for you. I prepared about a 10-page, 20-page handout. But make sure you set realistic goals and consider, if you wanna lose 10 pounds, why do you wanna lose 10 pounds? Do you think it's gonna make your life better? And if that's what you think, is that really true? Make sure you really ask yourself what is underlying your interest in changing how you eat. Because if you get to the bottom of it, you'll be able to stick with it. Create something that's realistic, get support, and be accountable. Make only 1 to 2 changes every 2 weeks. So we're trying to change and reformulate lifelong habits. And the way I know how to do that is to change 1 or 2 things at a time until the new habit becomes an old habit and I don't need to think about it anymore. And then I go on to the next thing. So oftentimes the first thing that I'll have clients do is add a big glass of water in the morning with maybe some lemon or lime in it, just so that they're hydrated. You know, they've been sleeping all night, they've used up a lot of their water in their bodies. Clean as their bodies clean, the organs clean up the mess from the day before, just go through cellular function. And water makes a big difference. So before you have your coffee, before you take any medicine, just starting with a big glass of water makes a big difference, hydrating your body. So start small, start with low-hanging fruit, and learn to listen to what your body wants and needs. Experiment with new foods, take chances. Resolve digestive problems. This is so important. If you have digestive health issues, if you have an excess amount of gas or bloating or constipation or diarrhea or abdominal pain, address that first, because just adding food on top of that might exacerbate it. If you've got a lot of bacteria in your small intestine, for example, and you eat a lot of fiber, you're just going to give yourself a lot of gas. So really work with someone, your physician, a coach, nutritionist, whoever it is, to resolve the digestive issues. Practice self-awareness, like yoga or meditation. I'm going to talk about this in a moment. Move your body, but not to excess. So I have a number of clients that spend their days making sure they get in 2 hours of exercise or an hour and a half of exercise every day. At 60 years old, at our age, that's not what we want to be doing. That's not supporting our bodies. So be mindful about movement. You want to incorporate it into your day on a regular basis. But you don't want to be going to the gym and pounding your joints in front of the TV for an hour and a half. Limit your sugar, limit your salt. And it's what you do most of the time that matters. So when you're out to dinner and you want a glass of wine and a piece of cheesecake for dessert, maybe share the cheesecake and enjoy it. This is your life, right? Enjoy it. But be mindful that if you're having the cheesecake, maybe the next day you have more plant-based foods and you skip some of the animal protein that you would normally have. So I want to talk for a moment, actually I want to back up for a moment. I want to talk about dairy. So there are a number of studies that show that dairy may be the single biggest contributor to inflammatory processes in our body. And it's not the lactose, it's the casein. So casein is about represents about 87% of the protein in dairy. It's a very big molecule. It looks a lot like the gluten molecule. It's very hard to digest. And Colin Campbell, maybe you've heard of him, he did one of the first really large studies called the China study, where he looked at a large number of people over a long period of time. And one of the things that he found was dairy was the only food that was consistently associated with cancers and degenerative disease. So the fact that you have issues digesting dairy, instead of taking lactate, maybe you ought to think about just eliminating it for 3 weeks and see how you feel. See if your allergies go away, see if the headaches go away, see if you sleep better. But being mindful of dairy, because it's really, one of the things that he says jokingly, he said, cows drink cow's milk and bunnies drink bunny milk and goats drink goat milk. Do you ever see them switch and swap? And I thought, yeah, that's right. So we've all grown up on the belief that milk is good for our bones, right? So what happens is with milk and calcium is that when you drink a glass of milk, milk is very acidic. And calcium, which is mostly in our bones and teeth, is alkaline. When you drink a glass of milk, the body's always looking for homeostasis. It's always trying to keep things balanced and normal. Not too many spikes in sugar, not too many spikes in calcium, so forth. So the body pulls out calcium from the bones and the teeth in order to neutralize that glass of milk that you've just had. So you've actually done the exact opposite of what you intended to do, which was to try and provide more calcium to your body. So we don't know this. This isn't common knowledge, but nutritionists know it, and Colin Campbell knows it, and Dean Ornish, who's, you've heard of the Ornish diet, he knows it. And people who are looking at this now, looking at the data, understand that dairy is not a helpful food for our bodies. So as I mentioned, when I was sick, one of the things that I wanted to learn how to do was to self-calm, was to change the way I went about my day, rushing through the day, but to learn to become more mindful, to pay attention, to be able to calm myself down. And so I did a lot of research and then decided to learn how to do meditation. And there are so many scientific studies right now that have been done in the last 20 years, but a lot are being done right now looking at meditation and brain function. And you actually change your brain by meditating, by introducing the quieting of the body, the quieting of the mind, the quieting of the body. You change the chemicals in your brain. You slow down or stop the release of cortisol. And cortisol is the stress drug, right? We need it if we're running from a bear, but we don't need it in a chronic way on a day-to-day basis. So being able to change the dynamic of the chemicals in our brain and body makes a big difference on how much we weigh, how well we sleep, how we manage stress throughout the day. You don't have to do a lot of meditation to have a big impact. And in fact, one of the things that I wrote in the recommendation is that Deepak Chopra and Oprah Winfrey do a 21-day meditation that you sign up for it, it's free. You get a 20-minute meditation every day, and it comes on your computer, and you have 5 days to use it. And I would urge you to try it if you haven't. Meditation really can make a big difference in your life. Visualization, prayer, developing, expanding, strengthening your spiritual practice, whether it means being out in nature gardening, or taking walks or hikes, or listening to beautiful music, or praying, or reading poetry or liturgy. Whatever it is that moves you beyond your physical self I found to be a really helpful practice. Yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, all these things help connect us with connect our mind, body, and spirit. So one of the things that I found that happened to me was that I was so angry at my body for being sick and not functioning well that I lived from here up. So I'd sit at my desk all day and work on the computer, whatever job I had, and I was living from here up. It was like I was disattached, disassociated from the rest of my body. And yoga helped me get back, it helped me become present. It helped me get back in my body and pay attention. Because when you do yoga, it's about the breath. It's about moving breath through the body. It increases your focus, not only your strength and your stamina and your flexibility and your balance, but it increases your mental focus. And I found that so helpful. Dancing, it's so much fun, right? Joy, we're just looking to add more joy into our lives. Journaling. So journaling, I think, is the cheapest form of therapy you can find. I mean, you write something down on a page. You're using both sides of your brain, not just using one side of your brain, like when you talk to somebody. And you have the opportunity to reflect, to really listen to your inner wisdom. And I am not a journaler. I don't like to do it, but I've learned how to do it. And I encourage people who are on a similar exploration or a similar journey as they move through the process. Well, so I talked about these, but there are a lot of studies that show that these mind-body interventions are very helpful for all kinds of symptoms and illnesses. For example, irritable bowel syndrome, constipation, heart disease, Parkinson's, autoimmune disease, depression. More than half of people in these studies show long-term therapeutic benefits. And they're strongly correlated with weight loss. So I find that when I'm working with clients who want to lose weight, it's not effective to just change the diet. It's important to address the mind and the spirit as well. And of course, I'm just the guide on the side. The people who do the work are the clients. But understanding that really it's a full mind, body, spirit exercise to change how you view yourself, how you view food, and to change your body. So as I mentioned, meditation does produce structural and functional changes in the brain. Yoga, I talked about that. So, support groups. I can't stress enough how important this is. It's one thing to be in a one-on-one relationship with a coach, and that's for generally shorter periods of time. But when you're in a group, you build support. So I spend a lot of my time working in Arlandria, which is a low-income Latino community in Alexandria. It's on the border of Alexandria and Arlington. And I work with groups of people, and generally they're women, and they don't know each other when we first meet, but they end up supporting each other. And so we've built a really nice cadre of women who know a lot about nutrition and health, who've learned to do yoga, who've learned how to meditate, and this was all very foreign to them. This was a population of women, for example, who threw out the yellow of the egg because they thought it was high in cholesterol and didn't realize that they were losing all the zinc and the lutein and all the nutrients in the yolk of the egg. Clients who were every one of them was diabetic or pre-diabetic. Every one of them had hypertension. And over the course of 10 weeks together, they created a cookbook that was just theirs, and it was for Latino foods, but it was with a lot of substitutes. So substituting healthier versions, healthier foods and ingredients for the foods that they were used to eating. So it really it opens our minds, our hearts, and our spirits when we share our life journey with others. And I don't know what's more personal than how we feel about ourselves. So I encourage you, if it's something that you're interested in, start a group and bring your friends along. So our bodies are sacred. Why not learn to take care of them? Start with what you can control and let go of what you cannot.